I hear him. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
Hey, what's up with it, fam? This is Hot Boxing Minute, your favorite pharmaceutical engineer turned boxing analyst, back at you with that uncut realness, because that's the only way I know how to break down this boxing game to you. In this video, I thought I'd do a technique breakdown for an upcoming fight. A pretty major fight as far as boxing fans are concerned. Caleb Plant versus David Benavidez. Tickets just went on sale for the March 25th date. It's going down at the MGM Grand Garden in Las Vegas. Boxing fans have been looking forward to this one for a while. There is definitely history and bad blood between Sweet Hands Caleb Plant and David Benavidez, the one they call Bandera Roja. So let's start this analysis off by breaking down Caleb's strengths. The first thing that stands out to most observers when watching Caleb Plant is his footwork. He most definitely is not the type to stand and bang, nor is he what we would consider to be heavy on the front foot. You can see in this clip here, when he was fighting Canelo Alvarez, Caleb Plant was not trying to stand in one place too long. What he will do is get his work off, then he will quickly make an escape. Usually the move will be lateral. Plant also cuts angles, which is different than lateral. Lateral movements denote side to side, but here against Caleb Truax, we saw Plant cut inward with sharp angles. He can even cut angles when landing combinations. Let's talk about that jab, shall we? Caleb Plant has a fairly effective jab, which is the key to setting up most of his offense. Sometimes it's just a pawing jab, a range finder, so to speak. He used it here in this clip against Canelo. This type of jab is usually used to pester an opponent and to establish range, as opposed to doing outright damage. But then again, sometimes, pardon the pun, Plant likes to plant his feet down and use force in his jabs like he did here against Caleb Truax. He will even change levels on that jab to make them unpredictable, and this creates opportunities to follow through with power shots. Then of course there's Caleb Plant's defense, specifically his shoulder roll. While not the picture of perfection like Floyd Money Mayweather, it is effective enough to allow Plant to sit in the pocket for good periods of time. He is even capable of throwing counterpunches using this shoulder roll defensive style. So let's pivot away from Plant and talk about David Benavidez, shall we? The undefeated former champion comes into this affair with a record of 26-0, and 23 of those wins coming by way of knockout. That equates to an 88% knockout to win ratio for those of you who aren't good at math. Now, David Benavidez doesn't exactly have one-punch knockout power like Mike Tyson or Julian Jackson, but he is good at throwing a large volume of punches, and at times he does so with great speed. The accumulation of these punches overwhelms his opponents and usually breaks them down to the point that the referee has to call a halt to the action. You can see in his fight with Kyrone Davis here. Kyrone was a live dog, but at a certain point, that relentless volume of punches starts to take its toll. This is a similar story for most of David Benavidez's stoppage wins. David does not get tired as the rounds go on. He actually seems to gain momentum, or a second wind, so to speak, as the fight goes on. Most of the stoppages occur in the later half of the fight. Ronald Ellis put up a lot of resistance against Benavidez, but in the end, it did not matter. The referee finally called a stoppage to the affair at 2 minutes and 3 seconds into the 11th round. David Benavidez, like Caleb Plant, also has a nice jab. In general, Benavidez only throws his jab heavy and with bad intentions. You can see here in his fight with Kyrone Davis. David understands that he has the length advantage, so there is usually no step to the jab, meaning that he does not try to close distance by stepping at the same time as he throws the jab. He throws it heavy from whatever position he is at. He will also vary the levels of it with equal dedication to landing it downstairs. Now for those weaknesses. Let's start with Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant's overall record is 23-1, with 13 of those wins coming by way of knockout. As opposed to David Benavidez, Caleb is not traditionally seen as a knockout artist or even a fighter that gets stoppages. That is not to say that he does not have enough power to keep his opponents honest, but will he have what it takes to stall the constant pressure applied by David Benavidez? Caleb Plant did recently link up with Stephen Breadman Edwards as his new trainer, and it would appear that Caleb is getting more pop on his punches since joining up with Breadman in the corner. You can see in this clip of his fight with Jose Uzcategui, Caleb throws a hook to the liver, followed immediately by a left hook up top, which drops Uzcategui. This fight was before he linked up with Breadman Edwards. Now you see in this clip against Anthony Durrell, that same double hook, but the result was much different. Durrell ended up knocked out cold by the time he took that hook upstairs. But this example is not enough to concretely say that Sweet Hands Caleb Plant is suddenly a power puncher. A very large percentage of Caleb's best victories came via decision. There was also the glaring aspect of Caleb's stamina. In the championship fight he had with Uzcategui, Caleb started off with lots of that famous footwork, tons of lateral movement, and even those angles. Oh, you know in boxing we do love us some angles. But as the rounds went on in that fight, Caleb slowed down. He became more stationary, and eventually it resulted in him having to complete the fight with a cut over his right eye. Mixing it in the trenches with someone like Benavidez will not serve to his benefit. Even in his fight with Canelo Alvarez, Caleb was moving swiftly and utilizing great footwork in the beginning. But as the rounds wore on, he slowly got into more engagements with Canelo. This eventually resulted in Canelo getting that TKO stoppage over Plant. David Benavidez. Now let's discuss some David Benavidez technical flaws, shall we? That relentless pressure that David applies is both a blessing and a curse. In order to have that particular offensive style, you have to be heavy on your front foot. This affects overall mobility, which is the reason you tend to see David Benavidez always moving forward in a linear, straight line. You can see in this clip of his fight with Kyron Davis, it isn't exactly easy to unload those rapid combinations on a target that constantly moves lateral. Benavidez also has a tendency to get too heavy on that front foot, so much so that his back foot will actually leave the canvas when he throws his right cross. This type of small mechanical error could be exploited by a fighter with educated footwork, which just so happens to be right up Caleb Plant's alley. So now that we've done a quick overview of both fighters' respective skill sets, how do you think this fight plays out? Will Caleb Plant's movement and defensive prowess be enough to overcome the offensive avalanche that is David Benavidez? You tell me how you think this fight will play out. You can share your thoughts with me in the comments sections. Don't forget to hit that like button. Are you not already following? This is Hot Boxing Minute, folks, the future of boxing analysis on YouTube and TikTok, and I will give my prediction on what I think this fight will play out like when it gets closer to fight date. Anyways, y'all, peace.